Pinned down by mortars, hunted by a sniper, and with no air support in sight, the Marines braced for the end, until the thunder of an A-10 split the sky, and hope roared over the ridge. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're watching from, and get ready for a story of courage, grit, and an unforgettable rescue. The midday heat clung to the air like a suffocating blanket. The ridge was a jagged scar of rock and dust, its slopes littered with boulders barely large enough to shield a man from the deadly rain falling from the sky. The first mortar landed just short of the forward trench, sending a plume of dirt and smoke high enough to blot out the sun for a heartbeat. The second hit farther in, its concussion folding men over their positions. Private First Class Benny Hawkins felt the blast in his bones and tasted blood at the corner of his mouth. He kept his hand on the wound at his thigh, too numb to notice how crooked his helmet had become. Sergeant Miguel Miggs Alvarez dropped beside him, calm in the way men get after hours of danger. He ripped open a fresh magazine and checked the rounds like a ritual. "Keep your head down, Benny," he said, voice low and steady. Miggs' grime-streaked face showed the stubborn resolve of someone who refused to let fear show. Captain Thomas Briggs crouched behind a jagged outcrop not far away, binoculars pressed to his face. He scanned the slope and the narrow gully that ran along the ridge, eyes sharp for any sign of movement. It took him only a moment to understand the danger. The sniper's position, though invisible, had a clean line of sight down the ridge's only usable escape route. If the men tried to withdraw through that gully, the sniper could pick them off one by one. Briggs lowered the binoculars slowly, the knowledge settling in like a stone. He turned to the nearest squad leader. "They've got the retreat path zeroed. If we fall back that way, we're sitting ducks." On the radio table in a shallow dugout, Corporal Matt O'Connor was hunched over the comms, fingers steady despite the tremor in his jaw. He was young, eyes raw at the edges, but he kept his voice clipped as he keyed the mic ridge hold actual to base. "We are taking continuous mortar fire, 1 Kia, multiple wounded. Request immediate close air support, over." The reply that came back was clinical and brief, but it landed like a blow. O'Connor's face shifted from hope to something harder. "Base to ridge hold," he read aloud, eyes flicking over the message. "Sector denied for air ops. Anti-aircraft assets confirmed in sector. Negative on CAS." Briggs walked over but did not take the handset. He let O'Connor speak what was already clear. The denial was a command. The sky above them was effectively closed. Miggs cursed under his breath. "Great. So we're on our own." The mortar cadence changed, a pattern that suggested the enemy was adjusting fire, finding the sweet spots to shred their cover. Each explosion sent a cloud of grit and hot metal over the men, and each time their world narrowed to the size of the rock they were pressed behind. A single rifle crack sounded from the ridge's edge, unnervingly precise. Everyone froze. O'Connor's fingers tightened on the radio as dust kicked up inches from his boots. The sniper had found the lane and was using it with deadly patience. Briggs shaded his eyes and peered toward a faint glint of rock where the angle would give a sniper a clean shot down the gully. He could not see the shooter, only the geometry of the kill zone. Retreat through that natural channel would be impossible unless the sniper was suppressed, and there was no suppression at hand. "Try comms again," Briggs told O'Connor, voice tight. "Get me anyone who can help. Even a diversion. Anything." O'Connor nodded, then keyed the mic once more. His voice sounded smaller over the handset, and he ran through the coordinates and the situation again. The same answer blinked back from base transmissions. "No air. Anti-air confirmed. No support." As he spoke, Benny groaned softly. Miggs tightened the tourniquet and offered small comforts. Corporals and privates moved like slow animals, conserving energy, breathing shallow, eyes always on the line of sight that might ruin them. Briggs moved along the line, offering short, practical orders: redistribute ammo, shift a man's cover, check the wounded. His outward calm was the only thing holding a fraying nerve together. Inside, he weighed the terrible options: hold and hope, or try something desperate that might invite slaughter. The hours narrowed into a sequence of incoming and waiting, of checking the horizon and looking at the sky for any sort of answer. O'Connor kept the radio warm, calling every channel he could think of, fingers dancing from frequency to frequency. Near the end of the light, when the heat line on the horizon began to shimmer differently, O'Connor paused and looked up, squinting into the high, empty blue. Around him, men muttered names and dates under their breath, the small prayers soldiers carry like talismans. Briggs crouched with Miggs for a moment, his voice quieter than the mortar chatter. "If we can't break that line, we're done." Miggs looked at Benny, then back to the slope. "Then we don't break it," he said. "We hold. We make them pay for every step." O'Connor checked the frequencies one more time, then looked at Briggs, ready to relay whatever came through. If there was a chance, it would have to come through him, the kid with the mic. Every man counted his breaths, each one sounding like a verdict. They waited for a sound that might mean salvation or the end. Or both. The sun hung low over the airbase, casting long amber shadows across the tarmac. The smell of jet fuel lingered in the air as Sarah Lawson crouched under the belly of her A-10 Thunderbolt II, fingers running along the pitted metal of its fuselage. She had just finished the final maintenance check, a routine she insisted on doing herself, even when others thought it unnecessary. She wasn't on the duty roster today. The A-10 wasn't even scheduled for a sortie. But for Sarah, not on the roster didn't mean not ready. From the open hangar doors, the hum of activity drifted in, ground crews shouting over engine noise, a forklift moving crates of ammunition. Inside the maintenance bay, her ground crew chief, Chief Master Sergeant Linda Cole, was logging final inspection notes on a clipboard. Cole was a stocky, sharp-eyed veteran who had been with Sarah through more than a dozen deployments. Sarah wiped her hands and stood. "All systems green," she said, patting the aircraft like an old friend. Cole glanced up, a faint smile tugging at her mouth. "She's ready to fly. Question is, are you?" Before Sarah could answer, a voice crackled over the overhead base intercom. It was clipped, urgent, the kind of tone that made everyone stop mid-task. "HQ to all units, urgent traffic. Secure channels only." Sarah froze, tilting her head toward the sound. A moment later, the murmur of an HQ radio transmission filtered through the comm set on Cole's desk. It wasn't meant for public broadcast, but in an airbase, news had a way of leaking through. "Enemy armor spotted advancing on Marine position near Ridge 47. Taking mortar fire, multiple casualties. Colonel Delaney orders all air assets to steer clear, no engagement, repeat, no engagement in the Ridge sector." Sarah's brow furrowed. Stay clear? That wasn't standard if Marines were pinned down. She took a step closer to the desk, catching the sharp intake of breath from Cole. "That's a meat grinder out there," Cole muttered. "Mortars, sniper nests, AAA emplacements. Whoever goes in is playing tag with a firing squad." Sarah's gaze lingered on the map screen where Ridge 47 blinked in red. She knew that terrain, the valleys funneled aircraft into predictable approach paths, and the ridge gave gunners perfect elevation. Flying into it was suicide, unless you knew how to make the terrain work for you. She swallowed. "I can get in there." Cole's head snapped toward her. "Don't even think about it. You heard Delaney, no one's to engage." Sarah set her jaw. "That's exactly why I have to." Before she could reach for the comms, the base's primary operations channel lit up with a voice she hadn't heard in years, ragged, hoarse, but unmistakable. "Viper 1 to any friendly, this is O'Connor. We're down to small arms, low on ammo. If anyone can hear this, Sarah, if you can hear this, we need you." Her breath caught in her throat. Captain Tom O'Connor. The man who'd flown her wing on her first combat mission. The one who had pulled her out of a burning wreck over Helmand. Cole's eyes darted between her and the comm unit. "He's on an open net. That's desperation talking." Sarah was already striding toward the cockpit ladder. "Get her armed, Linda." Cole planted herself in front of the ladder. "Delaney will have my head if I let you." "Then let him come for both of us," Sarah said, voice low but unshakable. "You know I can make that run. And you know they won't last without air." Cole hesitated for only a second. Then she cursed under her breath and grabbed her radio. Ordnance, scramble loadout, full he and Maverick load. Now. The hangar erupted into motion. Crew members sprinted to load hardpoints. A munitions truck reversed with a screech, crates clanking as they were hoisted into place. Sarah climbed the ladder 2 rungs at a time, sliding into the cockpit like she'd never left it. The seat embraced her, every switch and lever exactly where muscle memory said they'd be. Cole appeared at her side with a helmet in hand. You've got 30 seconds before Ops figures out you're gone. Make them count. Sarah locked eyes with her. I will. The canopy hissed shut. Systems came alive under her fingers, power on checks, hydraulic pressure, HUD flicker, weapons arming. Through the glass, she saw Cole waving the ground crew back as the arming pins were yanked free. The A-10's engines spooled up with that familiar growl, the sound of a predator waking. Sarah's thumb hovered over the radio switch. O'Connor, this is Lawson. I'm wheels up in 2. Hold on. Sarah pushed the throttle forward, the A-10's twin turbofans rumbling like restrained thunder. The battered terrain below rushed past in a blur of green valleys and jagged rock, each rise and dip a potential shield against the enemy's radar. She flew low enough that she could see sheep scattering on a hillside, their white flecks vanishing into the scrub as her shadow tore across them. The altimeter ticked down, but she didn't dare climb. Up there, she'd be a target. Down here, she was a ghost. Her eyes stayed locked on the terrain ahead, constantly scanning for power lines, ridges, or sudden drops. A low valley yawned before her, and she dipped the nose, the A-10's wings slicing the air just above treetop level. The Warthog's airframe groaned in protest, but Sarah barely noticed, her mind was already on the next obstacle. Then the weather shifted. It happened fast. The sky, a moment ago clear except for distant haze, darkened with a creeping wall of cloud rolling in from the west. The wind that had been steady at her back suddenly shifted, slamming her from the left. The A-10 shuddered hard, and her seat harness bit into her shoulders. She corrected, easing the stick just enough to keep her wings level without overcompensating. A second gust came, harder this time. The aircraft tilted sharply, the ground tilting with it in a dizzying rush. Sarah gritted her teeth and fought the crosswind, her boots working the rudder pedals in tight, precise adjustments. Come on, girl, she muttered to the aircraft, as if coaxing a stubborn mule through a narrow pass. On the ground, the Marines were being hammered. Mortar rounds fell with the irregular rhythm of a drunken drummer, sometimes 2 at once, sometimes a pause long enough to make them think it was over before another one screamed down. Dirt and shards of rock erupted around them, stinging their faces. Split up. Captain Briggs bellowed, waving his arm toward a half-collapsed wall. Squad 1, with me. Squad 2, hook north. Sergeant Hawkins tried to stand, but his leg buckled under him. He went down hard, cursing. Alvarez was on him instantly, slinging Hawkins' arm over his own shoulder. I've got you, Alvarez growled, hauling the man up. They lurched toward cover, moving as fast as Hawkins' injured leg allowed. Over the din, the sharp crack of a rifle rang out. A sniper. Everyone ducked instinctively, pressing low against whatever scrap of wall or earth they could find. In the sky, Sarah's comms crackled to life. Viper 1, this is O'Connor. Reading you? The voice was choppy, wrapped in static. Reading you, Sarah replied, keeping her tone calm even as she wrestled with the wind. I've got updated grid coordinates for target zone. His words came in bursts, each one followed by a faint pop. Sarah knew that sound. Suppressed sniper fire, riding the background noise of his transmission. You're under fire, she said. Nothing new, O'Connor replied, almost flippant. Sending grids now, the transmission cut off, replaced by a hiss of interference. Sarah adjusted her heading to the coordinates she'd managed to catch, jotting the numbers on her kneeboard. She had to trust she'd heard them right. Back on the ground, O'Connor ducked behind a splintered section of wall, the comms handset pressed tight to his helmet. Every time he spoke, the sniper seemed to find him. Dust kicked up inches from his elbow as another round bit into the wall. "Sarah," he tried again, voice low, "you've got multiple hostiles setting up anti-air east of the ridge. You're heading straight toward them." The warning made her glance at the radar. Sure enough, faint returns bloomed on the edge of her scope, stationary, but too deliberate to be anything but a gun emplacement or missile battery. For a moment, the idea of diverting clawed at her mind. Swinging wide could keep her alive, but it would cost precious minutes the Marines didn't have. Her thumb brushed the throttles. She could almost hear O'Connor's voice even in the static, "We need you now, not later." She stayed on course. The ridge was close now, the rising line of rock and scrub swallowing the horizon. The wind still fought her, buffeting her left wing hard enough that she had to counter with constant micro-adjustments. Sweat ran down her temples beneath the helmet, pooling under the edge of her mask. Her radar suddenly screamed a warning. The tone was short, sharp, "Missile lock." Her eyes snapped right. From the tree line near the ridge, a white plume shot skyward, the missile spinning like an angry hornet. "Missile launch. Missile launch," she barked, already yanking the stick hard left and down. The A-10 responded sluggishly at first, then with the stubborn agility it was famous for. Her G-suit inflated against her legs as she dove, the missile's smoke trail slicing past her canopy so close she could almost read the serial number on its casing. The Warthog's right wingtip dipped within yards of the ridge before she leveled out, the ground blurring past in a rush of green and brown. She punched flares, the brilliant sparks tumbling away to draw any follow-up shot. From the ground, the Marines saw it happen. "There," someone shouted, pointing skyward. For a split second, the silver belly of the A-10 flashed above the ridge, then a missile streaked toward it, vanishing in a flare-white explosion of light. "She's hit," a voice cried. Even Alvarez, gritting his teeth as he hauled Hawkins along, felt his stomach drop. The Warthog had been their one hope, and now, nothing. Just the sound of the wind and the pounding of distant guns. Briggs barked for them to keep moving, but in their hearts, more than one Marine was already bracing for the fight without air cover. Up above, Sarah banked low, out of sight, heart pounding. The missile had missed, but only by inches. She steadied her breathing and kept her eyes on the ridge ahead. There was still a long way to go. The horizon was a jagged wall of stone and dust, the ridgeline swallowing the pale Afghan sun in its shadow. Inside the cockpit, Major Sarah Lawson's pulse thudded in her ears, louder than the engine's rumble. She leveled the A-10 just feet above the ridge, the earth flashing beneath her in streaks of ochre and gray. Her thumb hovered over the weapon selector, already feeling the familiar resistance of the trigger stud on the control stick. Through the canopy, the sky seemed to bend with the force of the Hog's engines. The beast was awake, and it was hungry. "Ridge in 5 seconds, O'Connor's voice cracked in her headset from the forward controller position. "You'll have eyes on mortar positions immediately." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Copy. Eyes up." She pulled the stick ever so slightly, the nose climbing, the ridgeline rushing toward her like a breaking wave. And then, she was over. The world exploded into movement. Below, the valley sprawled in chaos. 2 Marine fire teams were pinned in the skeletal ruins of an old stone compound, the dirt around them peppered with enemy mortar blasts. Smoke curled upward in jagged columns, each plume a mark of near misses that could have been body counts. Sarah spotted them instantly. 3 mortar crews dug into half-moon trenches, their barrels already adjusting for the next salvo. She keyed her mic hog 2-1, tally mortars. Rolling in. The A-10's nose dipped, her reticle locked. She squeezed. The GAU-8 Avenger cannon roared, a sound less like a gun and more like the sky itself tearing apart. A molten stream of 30mm shells poured downward, kicking up geysers of dirt, steel, and fire. The first trench disappeared in a burst of flame. The second erupted seconds later, men and equipment flung like rag dolls. Mortars neutralized. Briggs's voice broke through, and in the background she heard cheers, raw, guttural relief from Marines who'd been seconds from being overrun. Sarah didn't answer, her eyes were already scanning for the next threat. "Sniper's nest," O'Connor barked. North side of the compound. I'm marking with red smoke. From the corner of her canopy, she caught it, a puff of crimson blooming against the rocky slope. Nestled in a crumbling wall, the sniper's rifle glinted like a needle in the sun. She banked hard left, the A-10 groaning in protest. The ridge fell away beneath her, the G-forces pinning her into her seat. Her HUD lit up again, and this time she selected her 500-pound Mk-82s. She lined up the run, the sniper still bracketing the Marines. In the final seconds, she leveled her voice. Guns, guns, guns. The release was clean. 2 bombs dropped, spinning lazily before slamming into the wall in a deafening double crash. The sniper's nest disintegrated into a cloud of stone and dust. Briggs came back on the radio, breathless. Sniper's gone. You're clearing us a lifeline here, Hog 2-1. She allowed herself one breath, then the sky lit up. Bright green tracers streaked upward from the valley's western edge. Anti-air fire. Sarah's eyes darted, 2 camouflaged positions halfway up the slope, their barrels tracking her climb. Taking AAA. Taking AAA, she called, instinctively jinking left. But the Hog was a beast, not a dancer, she could only weave so much. A sharp thunk rattled through her left wing. Warning lights flared amber on her console. She scanned her gauges, a shallow graze, fuel flow stable. She could stay airborne. But the anti-air positions were a bigger problem. From her current angle, the slope shielded them, they were tucked in just enough to be unreachable without changing approach. She'd have to swing wide and dive straight over enemy lines to hit them. O'Connor's voice was tense now. Hog 2-1, be advised, those guns will shred us if they stay up. Sarah's knuckles whitened around the stick. She knew the risks. Swinging over meant entering their kill box before firing, a direct invitation for every rifle and heavy gun in the valley to paint her canopy with lead. Her eyes flicked over the terrain, jagged stone, narrow gullies, a network of goat trails winding like veins through the dust. She could use the ridges for partial cover, but not all the way in. The last few seconds of the run would be naked, exposed, and close enough to see the enemy's faces. She exhaled slowly, centering the reticle in her mind before she'd even turn the Hog. O'Connor, she said, her voice flat and steady, mark the target with smoke. I'm coming over the top. There was a beat of silence on the net. Then, Roger. Red smoke in 30. Her hands moved without hesitation, throttle pushing forward, the Hog's engine screaming as she banked for the wide loop. G-forces pressed into her ribs, but she kept her eyes locked ahead, visualizing the line. The ridge flashed past her left wing. Ahead lay nothing but open sky, and the narrow ribbon of dust where she'd make her final pass. In the pit of her stomach, she felt it, the thin wire between control and chaos. One wrong move, one lucky shot from below, and this would end in fire and metal. But Sarah Lawson had lived her career on that wire. She angled the nose down, the target still hidden by the slope, but she could see the faint wisp of red rising beyond it. Somewhere down there, the enemy was watching the sky, waiting for her. She rolled level, engines howling, and aimed straight for the smoke. Sarah pushed the throttle forward, the G-forces pressing her into the seat as the ridgeline loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette bristling with enemy fortifications. Her canopy flashed with a streak of tracers, arcs of red light lancing toward her. Some zipped so close she heard the faint ping as fragments grazed her fuselage. Hog 2-1, you're taking heavy fire, O'Connor's voice barked over the radio. I see it, she muttered, drawing a slow breath. Her heart hammered in her chest. She could feel the sweat collecting under her helmet, every muscle tensed as she danced the stick left, then right, weaving between bursts of fire. A fresh plume erupted from the ground, a telltale signature of a missile launch. Sarah rolled hard, pulling the aircraft into a steep dive. The missile shot past her canopy, so close the shockwave rattled her frame. She leveled just above the treetops, the terrain blurring beneath her. The fortified high ground came into view, and nestled within it, the glint of an anti-air battery rotating to track her. Target visual, anti-air emplacement, she called. Clear hot, Hog 2-1, O'Connor confirmed. Her thumb hovered over the weapon release. This wasn't a missile shot, not Fox 3 territory. She selected Mk-82 general-purpose bombs, felt the slight shudder as the targeting reticle locked, and released. 2 bombs streaked away, vanishing into the smoke below. A second later, the emplacement erupted in a towering fireball, sending shrapnel tumbling through the air. Splash! Anti-air is down! O'Connor shouted. Without the threat of surface-to-air missiles, Sarah pulled back into a climbing turn, rolled over, and dove again, this time for strafing runs. The ridgeline's defenders were already shifting, trying to rally. She squeezed the trigger, her GAU-8 cannon roaring in short, brutal bursts. The shells tore into enemy positions, scattering infantry and forcing them to take cover. Hog 2-1, you're clearing them out. Briggs came over the comms, voice electric. On the ground, the Marines surged forward. Briggs raised his arm, signaling the assault. Alvarez, his jaw set, half-carried Hawkins while firing bursts from his rifle one-handed. Dirt and smoke swirled around them as they pushed uphill. Sarah banked hard, catching movement near a cluster of boulders. A mortar team was setting up, shielded from most ground fire. O'Connor, got eyes on a mortar pit, northwest quadrant, behind rock cover, she reported. Roger, marking on your HUD. Cleared to engage. She rolled in, the targeting reticle settling squarely over the position. Another burst from the GAU-8 split the formation apart, the rocks themselves splintering under the impact. Secondary explosions flared as their munitions cooked off. Mortar pit neutralized. O'Connor confirmed. But as she pulled out of the dive, a warning light flared red on her console. Her eyes flicked to the gauge, fuel was dangerously low. Too low. One more pass and the odds of making it back dropped sharply. Hog 2-1, your bingo fuel, O'Connor warned. Sarah's gloved hand tightened on the stick. She could turn for base now, save the aircraft, save herself. But below, the Marines were at the final stretch, pushing into the enemy's heart. If she left now, they'd face the full force of what was left. Her jaw clenched. Negative, staying on station. They need cover. She angled the nose back toward the smoke and chaos, the distant crackle of gunfire mixing with the steady growl of her engines. The engine tone had shifted, a faint irregularity in its hum, as if the jet itself was warning her. Come on, girl, she murmured, coaxing it into one last dive. She sighted along the advancing enemy line, stragglers regrouping for a desperate counterattack, and pressed the trigger. The cannon thundered, the recoil shuddering through the frame as lines of tracers ripped across the field, cutting the counterattack to pieces. Marines are moving up. Keep it coming. Briggs' voice was almost drowned by the sound of his own weapon. Sarah pulled up hard, the low fuel alarm blaring in her headset. The gauges were nearly bottomed out now. One pass too many and she'd be forced to ditch in hostile territory. But below, the enemy was breaking. The Marines surged over the last rise, shouts cutting through the smoke. Sarah climbed into the open sky, breath coming fast, eyes scanning for any remaining threats, knowing she had seconds, maybe less, before she'd have to decide if she was going to make it home at all. The ridge was silent now, save for the ragged breathing and low moans of the wounded. Smoke curled upward in lazy spirals, tinged orange by the fading light. The blackened husks of enemy armor still smoldered, their twisted metal a grim testament to the fight that had just ended. Below, scattered Marines moved with methodical precision, checking bodies, dragging their injured brothers to safety, securing the perimeter they'd bled to take. Up on the far side of the slope, Captain Briggs crouched behind a broken wall, his helmet smeared with dust and sweat. His voice came over Sarah's comms, low and hoarse, but steady. Hog 2-1, this is Briggs. You saved our skins up here. His voice faltered for half a breath. I owe you my men's lives. All of them. There was no time for long speeches. The comm crackled again, and this time it was O'Connor, the Marine who had been pinned down in the kill zone earlier. I knew you'd come, he said simply, and the line went quiet. Sarah's gloved hand rested on the throttle for a moment longer before she eased the A-10 into a gentle banking turn toward base. The battle space was secure. The ground war, at least here, was over. The fuel gauge was nearly kissing empty when the desert airfield appeared on the horizon. The dull hum of the twin turbofans seemed louder now, the Warthog's battered frame shuddering just slightly as she descended. She kept her landing approach clean, conserving every ounce of fuel for the final stretch. The tires kissed the runway with a muted thump, and the canopy glass caught the last rays of daylight. The engines wound down to a low growl, and the jet rolled to a stop. CMSGT Linda Cole was already striding toward the aircraft, headset still slung around her neck. Her grin was wide, but her eyes shimmered with relief. "Thought you were about to make me pull that jet home by hand," she said, helping Sarah unclip from her harness. Sarah smirked faintly. "Would have made for one hell of a maintenance report." Cole laughed, shaking her head. "Welcome home, Valkyrie." Colonel Delaney approached from the side, his boots crunching on the tarmac. He stopped just short of Sarah, hands behind his back, expression unreadable. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, the kind of gesture that carried more weight than any medal or commendation. Sarah returned it, understanding the unspoken respect in his eyes, and he turned away without another word. Later, as the air cooled into evening, Sarah stepped into the med tent. The antiseptic smell was sharp, but it was the steady hum of equipment and soft murmurs of medics that filled the space. A tablet sat on a folding table, propped up on a crate. The screen flickered, showing Hawkins lying in a field hospital cot miles away, his head wrapped in bandages, a half-smile tugging at his mouth when he saw her face. "You made it back," he rasped. "Yeah," she said, the corners of her mouth lifting. "So did you." They didn't need to say more. There was a quiet understanding, the kind forged between those who share a battlefield but fight from different skies. Sarah stepped outside as the sun sank toward the horizon, bathing the base in gold. Her A-10 sat at the far end of the line, its worn paint catching the last light. She walked toward it slowly, each step measured, the noise of the day fading into the background. Her voice, calm and steady, seemed to ride on the evening wind. "Up there, you see the whole field. Down here, you feel every heartbeat. But in the end, it's not about the ground or the sky, it's about the trust between them. That's what gets you home." The Warthog's shadow stretched long across the tarmac, and Sarah disappeared into it, ready for whatever came next. Stories like Sarah remind us that true courage isn't about glory, it's about showing up when it matters most. If her mission moved you, share this story so others can hear it too, and don't forget to subscribe for more tales of American heroes.